Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We are really excited to have you for our fourth installment of the solutions series that we're doing here, where we're basically diving into some of these really difficult, tough, and sometimes just unspoken about issues in sync licensing in terms of the emotional, the psychological, the mental hurdles that we have to get through in order to get to full-time income with sync licensing. So this is our fourth one. We will have a fifth one, but we're going to actually skip next week's. We will have a podcast episode next week, but we will wait for that fifth and final solutions series to come back the week after that. So due to some scheduling things, we're going to have to just push that back. But for this week, we really want to talk about the big, huge elephant in the room for most of you guys, which is not having enough time to create music. So many producers have the drive, have the talent. They know that this is something they want to spend a large chunk of their life devoting to. But the problem is, excuse me, I should have swallowed my gum beforehand. The problem is that having a day job while you are trying to pursue sync licensing is really, really tricky. And I did that. That's actually how I got started in my sync licensing career. Is I had a day job, a very demanding day job with a startup company. And basically rushing home every single day and on the weekends, spending any available moment that I had getting into sync licensing. So I know that it can be done, but I also know how really hard and difficult that is. So not having enough time to devote to sync licensing. There's a couple of big issues that get in most of your guys' way. As I just mentioned, the day job is usually the biggest one for most of you guys listening. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to go into some of those sort of strategies for how to help you go through that. But also, secondly, would be having minimal or not much support from your family. So if your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, whoever you're living with, if they don't see the seriousness and they don't take it as serious as you do in terms of what you're trying to do with your music, they might see your music as just a hobby that you're kind of getting carried away with. And you're just spending way too much time in your studio isolating, making music. And they don't really get it. They don't really understand what you're trying to do with your music. So if you're not getting a lot of support from your family, your immediate spouse, your partner, I mean, you're stacking the odds of success against you even that much more. It's hard enough with a supportive partner, but if you have to deal with that every single day where they're questioning and doubting and pulling you away from what you're trying to do, that can really, really tear on your time and sort of pull you away from your goal. So we'll definitely talk about that. And last but not least, of course, is kids. So if you have kids, the demanding nature of kids is obvious, right? So they're going to need a lot of time, a lot of attention, a lot of resources from you. And so how to learn how to balance those things with your sync licensing career and probably with a day job and with a wife, a husband, with a partner, right? It's a lot to manage for sure. And so for sure this week, I'm going to ask Mike and Trevor to really take the lead on that because they both have kids and they both have learned probably through trial and error what works and what doesn't work in terms of getting some really necessary, me time so that they can really focus on their work, but also not be a neglectful father, not be a neglectful dad. They really want to be present for their kids. So just to make sure they find that balance and making sure their kids, I'm sure, help them understand and empathize with them in terms of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish in their career. So a lot of really great things. This is going to be a great episode, so I can't wait for it. Let's start with the day job, though. I'm going to basically just start us off with a couple of just pointers here, and then I definitely want, Mike and Trevor, you guys to kind of chime in with what you guys think. The first thing that I always hear from so many producers is, especially when it comes down to your day job getting in the way of your productivity, is they say, well, I have a day job, and by the time I get home, I'm zonked. It takes up too much of my day. I have no energy, and it's basically, because of my day job, I can't get into sync licensing. I can't really do anything here. I want you to really just think about, is that actually true? Is it actually true that your career and your day job is so demanding and takes so much of your energy that it is impossible for you to create even a little bit of music every single day or every single week? Is it literally impossible, or is the issue that you haven't methodically thought about your life and thought about your schedule and maybe just tried things out differently than you've been trying them out, right? Because if you haven't entertained different schedules, different coping mechanisms, different approaches to increase your energy, to sleep better, to wake up earlier, to try to minimize some of the stress that your job puts on you, like meditation, like if you haven't tried all of those things, it's very likely, and I'd say probably more than 90% chance, there's no reason why you couldn't also pursue sync licensing with your day job and at least get this ball rolling while you still have this gig. Because I can do it, I've done it, and I know Trevor has worked with that way. I know Mike's done that. I know a lot of people that they don't just quit their day job and start sync licensing. That's usually not how it works for most people. They transition gradually from whatever they were doing. So I do want to just challenge everybody, if you've been holding on to that excuse, that story that like, well, if I didn't have I got to pay bills and I got this day job, so that's it. Can't really do much about that. Could be true. I'm not going to rule that out. That absolutely could be true, that you could have this monumental, huge, responsible gig that you got to work on, and it requires so much mental effort and time that you have really nothing else. But even if that's true, I bet you could squeeze out 15 minutes a day or even 30 minutes a day somewhere devoted to learning your DAW, producing something, even like, recording melodic ideas or musical ideas into your phone so that when you get home, you kind of have a head start. I challenge you. I think there's something you can do throughout your day to be able to do that. So, Trevor, maybe you can kind of talk to us a little bit about that to start us off with, in terms of this excuse that is so big. And I know that you deal with a lot of writers and composers that probably talk to you about that all the time. Like, well, I have a day job and I can only get so much done. So anyways, man, any thoughts you can share with us that would be helpful?
Yeah, I've had to try and not know people's personal lives because they would be frustrated with, me in the past, and I would be frustrated with them with this I don't have enough time kind of thing going on. Mainly because there's always things in your life that you can cut out, and I've noticed that the vast majority of those things are like people and events and stuff that you're doing, mostly going out and being social, that are kind of like time wasters, whether it's a person that you go out every couple of days and spend a couple hours a night, going out to getting drinks, or going to a friend's house and just like chilling out or whatever. Now this is more the younger, we'll probably talk more about older family type stuff in a minute, but I'm talking more like the younger. I have a job, it takes up a lot of my day, and then when my day is done, I then like go hang out and go do other stuff. Um, People really don't like giving that up, at least even like pulling back on it a little bit. And I think that that's like step number one. If your life is kind of job, not much else, but then friends, maybe family, like small parts. If you got wife and kids and stuff, or husband and kids and stuff, we'll get there. But as far as the like, I don't have a lot of time. I have a day job. I'm exhausted by the end of the day. Usually, yeah, that is true. I've had that scenario as well. But there are things you could cut out, and just kind of bite the bullet a little bit. Like, yeah, you're tired, but you're not too tired to go out for a little bit, like you do every once in a while. Why not like skip a day or skip 2 days of hanging out with the guys, or with the ladies, or whatever it is that you're going to go do, and just stay home and really like focus on knocking some stuff out. And like Jesse said, fraction things, like go like even you just cut like 30 minutes out between something, to work on a track or whatever. I think one of the first videos I ever saw of yours was a guy making beats in his car. I don't
Yeah,
remember
I
who that
remember
was, but
that. Yep.
yeah, okay. And so it was you. Okay, so there was this video, this dude making beats in his car. And it was like he did that like in between his like work and getting home or something like that. And it was like that's one of those things where you can knock out 30 minutes in your car, especially nowadays with like small laptops and stuff. Those kinds of scenarios you just kind of got to do until you get to a point where you can have a like flip the schedule where your job is gone. You can do that all day and then hang out with the buddies and stuff afterwards. But until you get there, you do have to just squeeze in and sacrifice some things here to gain there and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, man. You kind of remind me. I've been reading this book lately and had this ridiculous suggestion, but it's actually not that ridiculous. So this guy was saying that he used to spend 15 minutes in the shower every day. Just whatever. That might be long for some people. That might be short, but for him, 15 minutes is what he needed. He's now put a timer on his shower, and he does a 120-second shower. So it's 2 minutes. And while he's showering, he brushes his teeth and does squats at the same time. So he's exercising, brushing his teeth, and getting clean in 2 minutes. And so he just shaved off, I think he calculated it was a couple of hours by the end of the week that he had, by just saving that time in the shower of just like, and hey, I know what that is. Like you get that warm water on you and you're just like, oh, you want to sit there for an hour, right? But, it is discipline. It is sort of like, hey, could I save even 10 minutes right here? If you can save 10 minutes a day on something as silly as that, that adds up. I mean, that right there, that's over an hour at the end of the week. If you can just save 10 minutes on one of the things you've been doing every single day. And so those are the kind of things that if you can find those little edges on like, I can get something done a little bit quicker or carve things out. I just thought that was a funny example, but I mean, deadly serious too, because like that's a lot of time actually at the end of the year. If you calculate how much that is, that's probably at least a week or so left or extra that you get in your life actually of productivity. So really cool things like that. But anyways, Mike, I want to ask you too. What are your thoughts on dealing with people with that sort of job issue? Always kind of going back to that as to why they're not more productive.
Yeah. So I can speak a little bit from personal experience. And the thing about me is like, I did a little bit backwards. So for most of my career, my life, I've been mostly a freelancer, always taking like odd jobs here and there, always having like a fluid kind of schedule. And then it was really until recently, within the past, like sort of 5 to 8 years or whatever, that I had gotten a day job when basically when I found out that I had a kid on the way. And as everyone kind of knows, like when you're making music full time, stuff like that, like there's definitely periods of time where money doesn't come in quick. Doesn't necessarily come in regularly. You can save up and do all those kinds of things to help with those time periods. But at that time, I took on a day job that would help me kind of have stable income. Or at least ensure stable income for when my kid arrived. So at that time, um basically, I think like for me, um the first thing that I did, like sort of over the 20 years that I've been doing this, is, and this is not necessarily something I'll recommend to everybody, but like I really worked hard at kind of taming how much I slept. I used to sleep a lot. I used to be one of those people. I was just like, oh no, I require like 10 hours of sleep a night, or I can't do anything. I'm not functional, or whatever. But then, like, obviously, like when I started seeing the demands of, especially in commercials, writing music for commercials and stuff like that wasn't always possible to do. So, not to say that like I had to go do all nighters, which I have done too many times, and I would definitely not recommend that. But like, but over time, I've kind of trained myself to kind of get a good amount of energy after like 6, 7 hours of sleep. And I felt like that to be like my sweet spot. I can go on 4, I can go on less if I need to, but my sweet spot's like around 6 hours of sleep. And just right there, coming down from 10 hours of sleep a night, that's 4 hours a day, that I can put towards something else. So when the day job kind of happened, first off, I was able to kind of take advantage of my opportunities a little bit, in the sense that so I worked in post production, and those are usually 24-hour sort of businesses. So I was able to get a shift I was able to get a swing shift, which was basically like a 5 p.m. to like 1 a.m. Shift. And and what that's kind of taught me was that like the workday really is only 8 hours, and then within that workday, I started looking at the day as 24-hour units, right? And so that's only a third of the day. And then it's like, okay, well, I have all this time. So of course, another third could be spent sleeping, or for in my case, like 5, 6 hours, and then, well, I realized it's like, well, what am I doing for the rest? There's like a good chunk of time there in the middle of the day. So what is it that I'm actually doing? If I add up all the time I spend eating, whatever, cooking, or taking care of the house and doing all that kind of stuff, it really only added up to like only a fraction of that anyway. So I kind of use that mindset to kind of carve out some time to be able to be like, okay, every day I'm just spending this time whenever it is, and for me, it was like, it was always right when I first got up in the morning, and took a few hours to make some music. And then, of course, like I always had stuff like, what do you call it? Like I used to use like the machine iPhone app all the time. Like when I was at my job, I'd just sit there and just tap out ideas, because most jobs, at least, I don't know how it is for everybody, and but most jobs that I've been sort of that I've seen or whatever and have been on too, have basically, there's a lot of downtime, or there's more downtime than people think. I used to, and I took advantage of that too. I used to be a heavy smoker, so I take a lot of smoke breaks, and that's just what you do. Like, you smoke, so that, well, I figured like, okay, well, each smoke break is about 10 minutes, right? So when I stopped doing that, like I was like, oh, okay, great. I have an extra 10 minutes here. I can just tap out a beat. I'll take like, during your hour lunch break, I took like 20, 30 minutes to eat. The rest of the time I would tap out another beat, that sort of thing. Got me healthier, number one. And then also like got me more productive. So I think that like it's just more of a mindset, and just like basically it's two things. It's more of like a mindset and just seeing like, okay, well, I know that my time is limited here and there, but like it's figuring out how to make the best use of that time. And then of course during those short hours or whatever, I've also learned how to make things easier for myself, like templates and all that kind of stuff too. And that became really important for me.
Awesome. And I really like your mindset there on thinking about it in a 24-hour block. Because yeah, if you just think about 8 hours, you're like, well, that's a third, right? And it does kind of open you up to like, wow, there's a lot of actually other time, right? And another thing that's really important for you is you've kind of learned yourself what your sleep schedule, what works for you. Because every one of us, like for me, I can tell you that if I get a full 8 hours, like it makes my day so much better. The other night, I just was in that, you ever those nights where you're barely asleep, but it's such a light level of sleep that you don't really feel like you actually got rest. So I had one of those nights, and I noticed the rest of the day I was eating like crap, eating junk food, eating like mostly sugar stuff, getting cranky, kind of getting annoyed. Just everything started to like cascade from there. And I just was like, okay, what's going on? Why am I in such a funk today? And I was like, if I don't get that really good deep sleep, I really start to suffer. And so it's something that I really vigilantly guard. I mean, it's just something that is so important to me to make sure that I get it to bed at the same time or as close to the same time as I possibly can. I got that white noise machine on so nothing wakes me up. I try to just make sure I can do everything I can to keep myself asleep the entire night if I can. Of course, it's always a crapshoot. Sometimes you have a bad dream, you have thoughts, whatever, something just kind of wakes you up. So, but it's so cool that Mike, you have that sort of understanding that you can reduce your sleep and you don't really suffer too much. You can do that 6 hours or whatever, and that kind of works for you. So it's good to be like self-aware like that. A couple of points I want to make before we move on to talking about like support from the wife, the girlfriend, so your significant other. One is if you're feeling drained after work, welcome to pretty much everybody else's life too. Like you're not special that you feel drained after work. Everybody usually feels spent and kind of just tired after work. So the question is, if everybody feels that way, how many people have a recovery plan when they get home, right? Very few people actually have an idea of, if I feel tired, I feel zonked out, what do people usually do? Sit on the couch, watch TV, or these days probably get on your phone and scroll through social media or Instagram and kind of get lost in other people's worlds, which most of the time, not too much great content out there, really, if you be honest about it. Do you feel more enlightened and inspired and motivated after it? If you do, great, keep following those people. But most of us that get sucked into those wormholes usually don't feel better afterwards. So think about a recovery plan. A lot of people go to the gym on their way home. Like they bring their stuff. I know gyms now are closed, but once they do reopen, or you can find a park to go take a walk in or whatever, right? Improvise. Sometimes exercising after your day job actually can reinvigorate you. And a lot of times you think that, well, I'm tired, I don't feel like doing anything. It's actually the opposite. Your body maybe is craving more activity and more movement. So give it a shot. What do you have to lose? Try it one day. See how you feel at the end of your workout or your walk or run or whatever you did. And if you feel better than you felt when you first got off of work, hey, that could be a part of your recovery plan. 30 minutes is really all it can take. 20 minutes, really. Just get a little bit of blood flowing and kind of get that excitement. And when you get home, take a nice shower, refresh yourself, see how you feel. Maybe even skip the workout and just take a shower when you get home. Sometimes brushing your teeth and taking a shower will kind of trick your brain into thinking you're starting a new day. So you might actually feel you. So there's just a lot of stuff that everybody can do rather than just saying, I'm tired, I'm going to watch TV, right? If you're just doing that, you haven't tried enough. There's other things you can do. Definitely, I've talked about this in some of my other videos, that you should be treating your home studio like it's a external studio, like it's a studio that you have to call ahead and book time with. So you should have a schedule outside of your studio, maybe on your wall, and there should be a weekly time, little pods that you can reserve them. And I would definitely put them in a public place so that your entire family, wife, husband, everybody can see it. So you need to put on there the schedule, the date, and then whatever room or whatever time you need to book it, you need to put an X through it, or you need to highlight it and sign it. And that's yourself making a commitment to yourself that you're going to be in that room at that time for that 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, whatever it is. It also lets your family know you're going to be in there. So if they go wondering, where are you? Where's dad? Or where's mom? Or where are you? They can look to see, oh, well, they have studio time. And hopefully you've had that conversation. We're going to get into that's the time that you need to not be disturbed, unless it's an absolute emergency, of course, right? I have to say this, that early bedtimes and early mornings are going to be your best friend. Since I made that change in my life, everything else has gotten better. So that's just an easy switch. I wouldn't say it's easy. It's a simple switch. It takes some time to get used to, but I get to bed by 8 or 9. I wake up this morning. I actually woke up at 4:30 felt good. You know, sometimes I'm up at 5:30, but this morning I just was like, all right, 4 a.m. I guess that's the time my body wants me to get up. You won't believe how much stuff you get done in the quiet early morning when your kids aren't up, when your wife isn't up, when nobody else is up in the house. You just have that nice quiet morning to yourself. And then the last thing I will say is having a slow-paced consistency to your making music, especially with a day job, is really all you should be shooting for, right? So I think some people think I need to have 20 hours a week that I can dedicate to this in order to succeed. Well, right now I can only give 1 hour a week. With everything going on, 1 hour is all I can get. Okay, take that 1 hour and make sure you always get that 1 hour every single week. Slowly start to work in more time. Maybe in a month, you try to double it. 100% growth would be just 2 hours a week, right? And get to that 2 hours and then consistently stay there. That's way better than the producer that this week spends 40 hours on music and then next week doesn't do anything, okay? It's better to just be slow and small with that consistency and build that up over the long run than to, you know, go 100% and then just burn out in a couple of weeks, which is what most people do. So it's just like when you're getting in shape, you're trying to change your lifestyle. Most experts will tell you it's not wise to completely throw out everything you've been doing and try everything brand new the next day. It's just not going to work out. It's too much change. Our bodies are not really designed for that. Small little things, small little change. See if you can find 1 hour in a week, if you couldn't find any time, that you can put into music and get that schedule up there and commit yourself to just 1 hour a week. And you're going to feel really good at the end of that hour. You're like, wow, like I guess I do have some free time. And it's going to open your eyes up into other things in your schedule that you become aware of to go, I could cut this out, I could cut that out, I could, you know, save time here and there. And it'll start to really just snowball at that point. So anyways, that's the sort of day job stuff. Let's move into having minimal or no support from your significant other, your spouse, your wife, your husband, right? The biggest thing that I've heard for sure from a lot of Sync Academy members is sometimes the wife usually thinks of the husband's music as a hobby, as just something that's fun, something that's certainly a passion project. It's very important to the husband. They understand that. But when the husband comes in and says, well, I want to make a living out of this, that's usually when the eyes roll back and it's like, oh boy, here we go. Okay. And so they don't really agree or see the bigger vision. There could be many other issues going on there, obviously, within the relationship. They might just see this as another long line of sort of like, you know, rabbit holes that the husband is getting lost into. And I keep saying husband because, let's be honest, guys, 95% of my subscribers here and listening to this podcast, you guys are dudes, all right? So we're just going to be like that. Sorry, ladies. I know that you guys are here as well, but to make this like a little bit simpler, I'm just going to talk to the majority of you. You can obviously swap out the genders and make it work for you. You guys are smart enough to handle that. But usually it's going to be the husband that's trying to convince the wife that like, hey, you know, this is really something important to me and I think I can really make this work. And sometimes wives just don't get it. They're not really on board with that. So the first thing, the only real thing that you really have to know that I would say that really helps is having just honest, frank, and vulnerable conversations. You really have to just be honest about how important it is to you. You really have to let your wife know, this is why I'm dedicating so much time to this. This is why I want to be doing this. You obviously, to help sell it to them, can say, you know, and if I succeed in this, it will grant me more time at home, right? Because most of you guys probably have a day job where you're leaving your wives, you're leaving your kids, you're leaving your families. But when you do sync licensing, you get to do it all from home. Now, there's still going to be time, you know, constraints, and you're still going to have to really work hard. But at least when you want to take a 15-minute break, you can go play with your kids for 15 minutes, right? Or you can go hang out with your wife for 15 minutes. Whereas at work, you're not driving home to play with your kids for 15 minutes and then driving all the way back. That's not what happens, right? So you can kind of help sell the idea to her to say, hey, this is going to allow me to be a lot more present, a lot more available to you guys if I can make this thing work. So the more you can kind of include them into the vision, right? Even though they're not with you, maybe making the music, but you're including them into your future vision of what the success is going to mean for them and for the family and for everything, right? So that would be my best advice, is you really just need to have a really frank, open conversation about what you're doing there. I do always point people to, I will say, there was a video that I released probably last year at some point called How to Earn $2,500 a Month with Sync Licensing. And that video alone, I get most feedback from people that say, this is actually the video that helped convince my family or my girlfriend, or my wife, that I'm not crazy and that there's actually something realistic here. So I will link that below for all of you guys that are watching here on YouTube. You guys can check that out, or just search it, $2,500 a month with Sync Licensing. You'll find it on YouTube. Show your wife or your girlfriend that video. Like, it's about 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But I break it down logically, how even with conservative numbers, how that's not unrealistic to be able to earn that within a year or two in this industry. Now, 2,500 is not going to be, you know, completely making you roll in money, but it might cover most, if not maybe all, of your monthly expenses with the family. And maybe you guys can reduce some of those expenses and simplify your life to get to that point even quicker. So anyways, with that out of the way, Trevor, let's go back to you. Your issues, have you ever had issues with that? And maybe some advice you can give for anybody that might be struggling with a spouse or significant other not being on board for the sync licensing train.
Yeah, we're going to go through a lot here. So there's this thing, the reason why it's almost like a cliche, and what you had just, the image that you had painted of the like eyes rolling back in the head, people not taking you serious. The reason why that's a cliche is because that's what most people end up actually doing. That they actually get all hyped and then do nothing, right? It's something we all see, all of our friends and family. It's like, oh look, Uncle John's trying to sell us this thing again, and so we kind of get that as like our default. And so when you are somebody who's like who wants to do because this isn't just a career shift, this is a lifestyle shift. You kind of hit a bunch of points that I was going to bring up, which is essentially, you're not just like, oh, I'm going to stop being an accountant and just start doing music. It's like, I'm going to stop driving to work. I'm going to stop, not being here all the time. I'm going to stop sitting around talking to people that I don't really care about for like an extra hour. Because like we all know that like if you work in an office, you waste like, at least a quarter of your day, like just doing whatever. Well, all of that now is at home and you get to do what you want, right? So all of those things are part of the equation that kind of need to be a part of the conversation, not just for the idea of selling it to your wife or your spouse or whatever, but as trying to kind of paint the new picture going forward, because your family signed up for the old you, right? And it's a little unfair to just show up one day and be like, hey, I'm changing this all. And they're just kind of like, wait, what? Like, are you really going to do that? Are we going to make all these changes and then you're not going to complete the mission? Like, and so it's not really fair to kind of just tell them that's what's going to happen. And it needs to really kind of be a conversation of like, okay, this is where we are. This is where I want to end up. What about you? And really kind of make sure that they're, involved. I mean, that you've signed up for this life and now you kind of have to go, okay, if we're going to make this change, we all need to kind of do it together. I really want to do it. I think it would make me happy. I think it would make you happy, and yada, 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 right? You have a conversation of what they get out of it, what your kids might get out of it, like what everybody gets out of this thing, and then try to build a plan from there and really not just sell it to them, but kind of bring it all together in something that everybody can kind of see the vision. I think it makes it much easier, or not easier, but it makes it much more of a journey for everybody if it's everybody's involved. If there's goals for everybody that they want, because you have things you want, but your spouse is going to have things that they want. They maybe want a little bit more handiness from you since you're going to be around, and dishwasher's been broken for a year, or whatever this stuff is going on. And it's like, look, since you're making a lifestyle change, let's do all the things, and start really going through and committing to those things and really delivering, and they talk about this in like debt, and like fixing your debt, and kind of doing small stuff, growing to bigger stuff, and changing the way that you consume and the way that you spend money and all that stuff. This is the same here, is if you're going to make this kind of lifestyle change, you gotta like you can't just jump in and be like, things are changing, deal with it. I'm going to go lock myself in the studio. So with all of that said, there's so many things to consider, like your kids, for example, your spouse. One of the things that you had mentioned, which I can't remember now, but I was going to go to it, but I can't remember. But it, there's also still the past life that you have to phase out of, and whether it's the job, the friends, there's a lot of hard decisions you're going to have to start making to make that phase happen, and really coming up with like a plan and having this open communication with everybody involved is key. And like I can't stress enough, like I said at the beginning, there are so many people who just jump into stuff and it isn't even, they're not even that, it's not that they're not good, it's not that they're not motivated, it's almost never that kind of stuff. It's like it's never this like, what, they put a bunch of time into it and they suck. Like that usually doesn't actually happen. I mean, maybe it does at first, like maybe they're just bad because they've just started or whatever, but that's not the problem. The problem is usually the lifestyle that is kind of punching them along in the face while they're trying to figure it out. And so, yeah, so with all of that, just shifting the life, trying to figure out how to shift the lifestyle and be realistic. You're not in this scenario that I've just built, you're not a 20-year-old who can just quit everything and just start fresh, right? You have all this stuff that you need to dismantle and rebuild, and so on. And so be real. Like my final thought on this is just be realistic and be understanding of how to really get to your goal. I mean, this is true for, like, you watch a weight, like the shows where the people are like 400 pounds or whatever, and it's like you're not just gonna like go hard at the gym for a month and your life is going to change. Like, they make some crazy serious life decisions because they're in this position that needs a lot of change first before they can really get to the real goal. And that's true for this, because you've got so much going on. You really got to, make changes. I mean, there's tons of different things, like, cutting back on expenses, to maybe then being able to cut back on your job. Maybe both you and the spouse want certain things, and when one of you stays working, the other one doesn't. And you just like really shift, plan, and be open and honest so that you can actually get to the end goal, instead of trying to just plow through a brick wall and not plan on anything, just like only see the goal and not the way to get there. And I think that would be my my advice, is to make sure that plan is pathed out, and have an understanding, like we talked about in the last thing. Like, you may really only have time to do 1 to 2 hours a week at first, and that might be your life for 6 months, where you're just kind of every little bit you can squeeze, and at the end of 6 months, like, you've got a little bit and not much. That may not be nearly as much as you want, but it's better than nothing. And it's just more, like, eventually the snowball will start to grow. But that snowball is going to look different for you as it might be for somebody else, some 20-year-old who just dives into it. So anyway, all of that, I just want to kind of express that there's like expectations and so many variables, and you really got to understand that, because too many people get tunnel vision of the ending, and the other things don't have tunnel vision. Your family, your friends, nobody else has that tunnel vision to be like, I can't wait till you get to the end. They're there during the journey, and so are you, and you got to remember that.
Great stuff, man. Yeah, you guys, I hope you guys took notes on that one, because getting them involved with it, that's so important. Yeah, to know that they are a part of this journey with you, that you're not just like, all right, I'm going this way with or without you guys, but you want to ask for their advice. You want to bring them on board. You want to show them the vision. You definitely can talk to them about, like, what you're working on, what you're trying to learn. Show them your music and say, hey, this is what I did today. This is what I did a month ago. Look at my improvement. So kind of getting them on board with what your progress is, so they can hear for themselves and see for themselves that you're actually doing this. And one thing I do want to highlight what Trevor said there, which was that, if you, at the end of 6 months, if you've only been doing an hour a week, you don't have a lot, but you have something. It's true. You might want more for your, more to show for all the effort, or the time, I guess, more for the time. But what you do have in that 6 months is you have a lifestyle change, right? And that's actually way more valuable than probably the music that you made. Believe it or not, that ability to stick with something for that long and keep that consistency is now a muscle that you've been flexing for 6 months. And so if you need to crank that up to 2 hours, you've already done it, right? You've already gone 1 hour. So now you can crank it up. You can crank it up and crank it up. So that is, and Trevor and Mike can probably back me up on that. That's usually why most people are bailing out, is because they burn out. They just get so excited, but they don't have the long-term, consistent, every week or every day, putting a little bit into their career. So even if you're only putting an hour in and you get to 6 months and you're like, well, okay, I only have a couple of tracks. Wow, 6 months and a couple of tracks is like, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You should be seeing it as, look at this pattern of consistency and long-term thinking that I've been able to prove to myself that I can do that. That should show you, that should have a huge boost of confidence for yourself, that you can do anything you'd like to. You should make any change to your life that you want to, not just in sync licensing, but you have an ability to be able to do that. And it is like being Neo in the Matrix. You start to kind of just walk through life a little more effortlessly when you figure out this one little tiny skill. It's absolutely true, man. Thank you, Trevor. That's great stuff, man. And Mike, how about you, man? Any further insights you can give on dealing with, wives, girlfriends, that kind of thing?
Well, for me, I'd like to talk more about like when I started and really dealing with my family. So I grew up in a pretty strict sort of Asian household, family of doctors. That's what they understood, kind of thing. And and that's where they, not necessarily wanting me to be a doctor, but like they didn't necessarily understand the arts. And
I can only imagine. I can only
you
imagine
know
your pain, man.
so especially as a way, as like that's always a hobby, right? Like it's never a profession, kind of thing. So on top of that, and I realized later that like another thing too that they were looking at with me, no matter what it is I always wanted to do, there was always this air like, okay, well, you need a backup. You always need a backup, right? Like, fine, do whatever you want to do. Like, everyone has dreams, right? But like, basically, kind of with this sort of underlying message, it's almost like, yeah, but everyone's dreams does get shattered, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of like this sort of message that's kind of pumped into me, like, a lot through my childhood. Not necessarily outwardly, they were supportive. At times they weren't necessarily standing in my way or against me, but like, but yeah, my family definitely had that thing of just like a traditional job, traditional profession, that kind of thing. So, and what I realized later was that, like, in my years of trying to prove to them, oh, I can do this, I can do what I want, really at the end of the day, what I was trying to do was prove to myself that I could do it. So, and I started to understand what it was that they were actually seeing, and this happened a lot later. And basically what that was is, like, as a child, like, um i I took piano lessons when I was really young. I excelled at that. I was a tennis player for a long time, and I excelled at that. And I recognized, and they had recognized, that I had talents, and I had talents in certain places. And the problem is, I recognized that too much. I knew that I was talented, and so I didn't work hard enough, right? So any endeavor that I wanted to do, that would be the default. That's what they saw. So that would be the default. It's like, okay, well, yeah, it's kind of like more of like a, I believe it when I see it kind of thing, right? And first, and so it was this journey of like proving really to myself, like, no, I'm going to work hard at this. I'm going to train myself at this to really work hard and consistently over time and show that it can be done. And eventually, when I started getting, like my first wins were small too, like, and I realized too that, my family, they didn't need me to be making, like a full year's wage or like on my first gig. They didn't need, all the small steps and whatever. It's like, that was always like, okay, oh, I see you, like, that's cool. But then when the next one happened, I kept working at it, then it became more of a, of an understanding. And during this whole time, I think communication is definitely key. Like, I did communicate to them, like, look, this is what I want to do. Like, I realize, or not that I didn't necessarily know this at the time, but it's just like, because I want to do this so bad, this is like where my passion is. I'm gonna work hard enough to make it work, right? And I think when they started seeing those results, that's when it was like, oh, okay, wait a minute, this can be a thing. This can be something that's achievable, And then that turned into, like I said, there are never roadblocks, but like from them, kind of, you know, always telling me to focus on the backup or whatever, to really supporting full-heartedly, like, you know um what my dream was. And the thing about it is, for me, like, I've never been a believer of backups. I've always been like, I've always believed that, if you spend, the time that you're putting into kind of setting up a plan B for yourself is time taken away from plan A, time and effort. You know what I mean? So the idea is to make plan A work, as best as possible. And of course, like, in our game, it's a marathon, right? So it's like, there's time to make it work. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. It's like, I think people that get out like too early, it's just kind of quitting too early. So yeah, for me, it's mostly that. And then after that, basically after, you know as far as meeting new people, as far as, stuff like that, like, I've always just tried to gravitate and, kind of surround myself with people who, I can already tell, like, people who get it. Not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be in entertainment or in arts or anything like that, but just understand, like, a long-term vision, of something. And it doesn't necessarily, like I said, and it's more of that long-term versus short-term, not always so focused on that next paycheck that's coming and what's going to happen with that. And, like, what's, somebody who can go with me on that journey to see, oh, okay, I see where you're trying to get to in 10 years, and stuff like that. And then just kind of follow me along, or not follow, just kind of ride with me on that. So
Yeah, man. And just delayed gratification. That's basically it, right?
yeah.
That's what we've been talking about. It's like the whole thing of, it's the whole title, basically, the whole theme of all this stuff is the delayed gratification of, you know, sticking something out for a long period of time, especially, I mean, for you, man, to get out, to be able to do what you've done with that kind of pressure in the beginning of your life, that's a really hard thing to overcome. I know a lot of people, especially the younger viewers, I know a lot of you guys are going through that, where you have basically parents who are kind of, I don't know, music's not really a job. It's kind of more just like for fun, and they want to steer you away. So again, you got to kind of make your choices. And like Mike said, he was doing little gigs here and there, and just started to see that, like, hey, you can make money. You can do something as long as you're being useful to people, and I can use my skills and my talents to serve somebody. And that's exactly what we do here in Sync Licensing. So tricky stuff, though, man. It's really, really. I just had that chat with that a young lady a couple of weeks ago on my YouTube channel, just about that, how she's struggling with that, having family members kind of doubt her and not really be all on board with what she's trying to do with her music. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm very fortunate that my parents both are just like, go for it. Whatever you want to do, like, go for it. I was very, very blessed that they gave me that kind of like, permission to go do that. But I know that's not the reality for most people. They don't get that sort of understanding. So, but good for you, man.
I will add really quick, though, that I did have to be pretty rebellious about that for a large portion of time, and it was
absolutely
more,
it's not like they're just like, well, you want to do it, so all right, we'll let you do it. Yeah,
totally. But again, like later I found out that like really what I was doing, I was rebelling against my own nature of like, it's kind of like, don't be lazy, you know what I mean? It's like, you made this choice, you said it out, you proclaimed out to the world that you're going to do this, so you better do it, kind of thing. And that was more of like my own inner struggle.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, so you touched on something that I think is after my entire spiel, something that probably is as important, if not more important, due to and this is something from personal experience. I heard this quote a long time ago. Somebody said, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." Was like the quote. I don't remember where it was from, but it's always bounced around in my head and it's never left. And it really became apparent to me a couple years ago when I really did switch the people I was around. And being around people that, one, you want to be like, not like oh, I want to dress like them or I want to go down the same path as them, but more along the lines of like, I want to have a lifestyle like they do. Not specifically, but more along the lines of like, I want to be able to be around people who I tell my little successes to, or my big successes to, and they're hyped because they have little successes that they want to talk to me about. And having like changing and having those people in your life, that's almost like rocket fuel in your just in your mind all the time. Because one, it's so nice to have somebody to talk to about that, like just doing stuff, and and in the reverse, it's so much nicer to not have somebody like constantly like, well, okay, whatever, dude, like having that stuff go on. So I that's one of those things that like, that probably is as big, or if not bigger, of a thing to try and figure out how to do, is just have people around you that are motivating you, that you kind of want to follow, or not follow, but like be like kind of going with, and you do the same with other people, where somebody else might, you help pull them along like somebody's helping pull you along. And it works so much better than trying to kind of fight through all the all the doubt and all the the you can't do it, or oh, it's whatever, dude, like all that stuff. So anyway, I wanted to throw that in there because it's something I think people probably should focus on, that people really don't.
Absolutely, yeah. Your friends make such a big deal, a big difference in your trajectory in life. So I can't agree with that more. So absolutely, man. So now, last but not least, let's talk about kids. And I definitely want to have you guys kind of take the lead on this one. In terms of, maybe, because I know you guys, your kids are, probably, I think below 6 for you, right, Trevor? Your kids are under 6, yeah. So you guys are kind of more you guys are sort of newer dads in a way. So I know some people watching this, they're, maybe, they have teenagers and they have older kids, that kind of thing. But for sure, I want to ask you guys and pick your brains on, what you have noticed in your lives from infant to however old they are now, and having to find that really delicate balance of being able to work, get what you need to get done, focus on your business, and also be a present dad for them. So, Trevor, why don't you go ahead and just take it away and let us know what works for you and what strategies seem to be effective.
Yeah, it's clear, dude. Like, my desk has just stuff all over it, bags of
there you go.
None of this is mine. Well, this used to be mine, but now
of course.
Okay, so man, it's I've had 2. I'll have another one coming soon. And it's different for each kid, and like the demand, depending on how they, what their demand is and stuff. But for the most part, I think I can't imagine the other scenario where I have to leave all the time and then come home. And that's most people's scenario. So like as somebody who's kind of in the you get to be home, like I find it, and maybe this is maybe Mike or somebody else who's listening has a different, experience, but I find it like way much easier to be able to give the amount of time. Like I said before, people who take smoke breaks or just hanging around the work cooler, like that's all probably enough time or a good amount of time to be able to get like to really, do some stuff with your kids. Like, I'll just stop what I'm doing randomly, unless I'm really focused or whatever. I'll stop what I'm doing and go run out there and like help color something or, throw them on the bed a couple times or whatever. And doing that kind of stuff kind of just eases uh, the demand and stuff a little bit, because you get to they get a little bit of you, but then they go back to what they're doing. And so for the most part, I think once you're in this mode of the lifestyle change, where this is what you're doing all the time. Now, in the scenario before where you've got your job and now you're trying to transition and all that kind of stuff, it could get really hard with kids, because I mean, they're really demanding, especially nowadays when a lot of people aren't probably going to be sending their kids to school because of the whole COVID stuff. And so they're really going to be at home. So what, just like in my last thing, it's having a conversation with your significant other of what the plan is for the kids, and how, because you don't want to neglect them and you don't want to leave. Like I'm a music producer now, leave me alone. So you gotta, make a plan and figure out how to keep them from like losing their mind, especially nowadays when they're at home all day, every day. Um, and like I said, before, like you got to be honest and you got to be fair with them, because they didn't sign up for your lifestyle change. You're doing it despite them, and so you kind of got to be fair with them and be like, I may have to not work an extra hour today on my music. I got to deal with stuff that's going on with them today. But then in other days, make deals with your spouse or whatever, and really make sure you're kind of you're not sacrificing anything there. But as far as uh, how difficult it is, and there's things are just going to bleed over. As you can see, I've got toys and snacks on my desk and stuff, and it is what it is. You just kind of it's I think everybody sees that image of like the dad at home with like the like the fingernails done and the thing on their head or whatever, and you just kind of keep rolling with it. I think for the most part, it probably, from my experience and from my experience of talking to other people, it's a pretty natural kind of like, you just keep going and you've got them with you and you just do your thing. I would say it's not that difficult once you're in the scenario and you kind of understand your kids and your lifestyle and all that stuff. You just keep rolling with it. So I don't have a lot of like, hey, here's a bullet point kind of thing. It's kind of a fly by the seat of your pants and figure it out kind of thing, I feel.
You make it sound easy, man. You make it sound real
I'm not
easy.
trying to, because I'm not saying I'm not. It's not easy, but it's not. I think it's natural. I
Yeah.
guess that's it's a natural like thing, it's not like quitting smoking or something,
Right. Right.
or fixing debt or something like that, where you got to really kind of map it. Like I think with kids and stuff and family, really in a relationship type stuff, it's natural. So you just kind of make sure you understand it and roll with it fairly and stuff. So
There you go. Yeah, just having those communications for sure, and letting them know what the deal is. So cool, man. Mike, how about you, man? What can you add to that with your kid?
Well, first, Trevor, I think the real reason why you don't have bullet points is because as soon as you write the bullet points down, everything changes. So
yeah, then they turn the next year old, and then it's all different anyways.
So yeah, there's definitely no set plan, no way. So from my experience, so essentially like when I have a 5-year-old daughter. And when she was an infant, when she was just born, that's when I had basically gone back out into the workforce and gotten started working at a post-production facility and stuff like that. I got a day job kind of thing. So yeah, I was dealing with first-time dad, like newborn, day job, and also trying to get everything going with my music career. And the kind of I don't know, one of the things that I kind of learned looking back on that is really just like I've just had to learn to like kind of forgive myself, and that's really just like, just in the sense of like, okay, well, um like for instance, if I got anyone that's gone through this and gone through the infant stage and everything like that, just how hard that is. Just like you don't necessarily like. I pulled all nighters in the past, and I know what it's like to not sleep, but you really don't know what it's like to not sleep until you have a kid, like so. And I joke about this, like now, like when I talk to friends that don't have kids, and they try to tell me how tired they are. I'm just like, no, you don't know what tired is, bro. So but I think during that time, that's like kind of made me learn how to just like, if I'm tired, I need to take a nap. I need to take, what if I need to like recharge, like kind of, and if something doesn't get done, like I got to forgive myself for that, because at the end of the day, like my number one priority is my kid, and making sure, everything is taken care of, and I'm looking out for her and everything like that too. Now obviously, you don't want to fall into a pattern to where it's like you're missing out on too many things, or if you are, that's part of also knowing your situation and also forgiving yourself too, in the sense of like if you are starting to miss out on commitments, well then maybe you got to change those commitments. Maybe it's not a matter of like, okay, well I just got to bust through everything and get everything done. Maybe it's just like being realistic and like, you know what, I can't do that. And that's another thing that I've had to learn too, is also how and when to say no, a lot more. And I've actually found that when it comes to, especially with my clients, like doing that, like it didn't really damage any working relationships. It actually made some better. And what I found was just like, just being open and upfront about like, hey, here's the situation. I can do this, I can't do that. As opposed to like saying like, oh yeah, I can do everything, and then just dropping the ball, so like, which is like way worse. So that's like, when she was an infant, that's like that's been kind of what it was like. And then as she's grown up, like, and especially to now, it's like, now is especially kind of challenging because there's homeschooling involved, but this all goes back to the 24-hour blocks that I like to just segment the day in. And I found that like, homeschooling right now takes about, it's probably about a 3.5 hour commitment a day for me. But think about that, it's like 3.5 hour commitment, right? Or 3.5 hours a day. That's still like 20 plus hours. Fine, you got to sleep, you got to eat and all that stuff, but really at the end of the day, you're still left with 20 hours, right? So I can still run my business, which takes a lot of time. I can still make music for myself and for my business and stuff like that too. But like, what I have to do is just be more efficient, and this is just really, like I said before, just coming up with templates, coming with new ways of like, even in the sense of like, I mean, you know, I'm totally reliant on Gmail's like smart, smart sentences. They finished the whole AI
Love
thing
that.
they got. So it's like, like I let that.
It finishes. Let me know your thoughts.
Yeah,
I've
totally.
saved time. I've saved so much time just having it do that for me in little bits of time for like 400 emails in a month.
Oh, totally. So like I heavily rely on stuff like that. I have like templates, like, just all over the place with everything, not even just like my workflow with music, just everything, like scheduling, just so I'm just kind of, there's a lot of stuff that I found that like, if I can limit my like sort of brain capacity, I will, because I have to put so much more attention now to my child, so but yeah, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I think and then of course now, I really, really, really savor those hours like before she wakes up. Like I wake up at like 4, like 3:30 sometimes AM, and I have like a good 3-4 hours before she's up. And and if you're able to over time kind of train yourself to like, work efficiently or work faster or whatever, I've found, especially over the years doing commercials and stuff like that, I've gotten to the point to where I can do a track in 4 hours. So it's like, well, there's my 4 hours right there, there's a track done. I can do that every day if I wanted to, or even if I don't get a track fully done, like it's on its way there, so. And so yeah, I don't know, I mean, it's just kind of, I don't, again, no bullet points because it always changes. And I would say that like the cool thing about not being at a day job, let's say, but or even having a day job, but also, I think really what it is just learning how to become more efficient with what you do, so that, and to me, that's kind of made me appreciate the time that I have more, so it's like I don't really feel like I'm wasting time. So I spend time with her. It's like, okay, that's what I'm doing, right? It's not, and then I go to make music, and that's what I'm doing. It's like all my focus and energy is onto that, so.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of flexibility, a lot of communication, a lot of just rolling with the punches, and basically just kind of improvising. It seems like a lot of this is improvising. You'll have your plan, and then your 5-year-old comes in, and that's the end of your plan, right? So there's definitely going to be a sort of like just kind of rolling with things. Basically, it sounds like that's some great advice. I think a lot of listeners can really benefit from. And of course, I would also say is just like with your girlfriend, your wife, like try to get your kids involved. If you want them to be excited about your music with you, is ask them like, what do you think about this song, and get their opinion on the music that you're making, or show them like, look at the cool colors on my screen, look at these different, that kind of stuff. Like all these DAWs now have all these really trippy colors on them. You can ask them for some ideas, what they think would be better for the track. You don't obviously always maybe take the advice of a 5-year-old on what you're going to do with your track, but definitely get their advice and ask them what they think about it. I would think that would be helpful. And just again, the more incorporated you can get them into your sync licensing career, the less isolating it is from the family, right? The more that they are a part of that now. They're more, and of course, that does mean that there maybe needs to be some boundaries too, where it's like, well, I'm working on music right now, and I can't wait to show you what I've done. And as soon as it's done, I want you to come in and give me some notes on it, right? Or something like that. I know that some people can do that. So obviously having those healthy boundaries of like, there's a time and place to have the interaction. And there's also a time and place to be able to be alone and create it. And maybe that is, like you said, Mike, waking up at 4 a.m. and having, 3 or 4 hours, dude, that's half a work day. Like that's a lot of stuff you can get done. That's why I loved it. By the time it was 6 a.m. today, I pretty much had most of the stuff I had to get done like in 2 hours. I was like, whoa, like just to have complete uninterrupted, like just quiet morning time for myself was just, that's where you get hooked on that stuff. It's really addicting actually, because you're really like living an extra life when you get to wake up that early. So great stuff, guys. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you guys with your insights. And I hope those of you that are watching, you learned something, you got some insight, you kind of moved a little forward in terms of your thinking on this, and hopefully you're just going to try something different. Like if you're constantly running up against that wall and you don't have the time and you feel like it's just impossible, hopefully now you're going to let go of the excuse a little bit more and say, you know what, it's difficult for me, but I'm going to try something. I'm going to do a different thing. I'm going to have a different schedule. I'm going to add something. I'm going to take away something. Just one tiny little change this week to see how it works for me moving forward. And please, guys, do leave us your comments below. As always, let us know how you thought this conversation went, if it was useful for you, anything we left out, anything we should definitely be aware of for you, for your situation about missing out on time. I know there are probably a million other little scenarios that people can have, but we wanted to just cover the big ones that most people are dealing with. And of course, there might be some time to talk about other issues in the future. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Next week, I'm going to have an interview with a very talented young man. He's 22 years old and he's already blowing up in the sync licensing business. I know you guys are going to love that conversation. And then the week after that, we will come back with Trevor and Mike and we'll finish up our solutions series here. And I do want to maybe continue on with these kind of topics in the future with this podcast. I think a lot of you guys are really enjoying these sort of non-technical conversations that we've been having. It seems to be really helpful for you guys. So stay tuned. Some great stuff's coming your guys' way.